Hello again and welcome to another edition of First and North, where we talk all things NFC North. My name is Dan Miller. I'm at Fox Detroit, where we cover the Lions. I want to welcome in the rest of our panel as we get ready to go this week. We have Brandon Cruz from Fox Milwaukee, where they keep an eye on the Packers, Cassie Carlson, Fox Chicago, the Bears, and Ahmad Hicks, Fox Minneapolis, where they cover the Vikings. Week 11 is behind us. We had some nice victories. We had some extremely difficult losses. We'll talk about all that. Week 12 ahead, it's all divisional play. It's all NFC North. So we'll get to all that coming up. Cassie, I'm going to start with you. Feel like we stole one from the Bears on Sunday. It was a tough one for Chicago. Obviously, a heck of a comeback for Detroit from 12 down with 4 minutes and 15 seconds to go. What's been the take in Chicago coming out of that one?
Yeah, extremely disappointing, right? The Bears had a chance to have the most signature win of the Matt Eberflus era going into Detroit, the NFC North leaders, and getting their first division win over the last 2 years. And you just mentioned that right there, up 12 with 4 minutes to play, dominating the time of possession, 40 minutes on the field with this offense. They had 4 takeaways in this game, something that had not been happening for them leading up to this point in the season, and it was just a total collapse. And the unfortunate thing in Chicago is that this isn't the first time we've seen it. Right? The Bears haven't been able to close out games dating back to last year. They don't know how to win games. And they had a game earlier in the season against the Denver Broncos where they gave up a 21-point lead in the second half and lost that game as well. So this one hurt in Chicago. They had a chance to really right the wrong of the season and everything that's gone bad. And they looked like the better team for 3/4 of that game. Justin Fields returned off of his right thumb injury after missing 4 games, played, I thought, out of his mind, rushing for 104 yards, which is a season high for him. Didn't throw the ball as much as I think people would have liked to see, but had a beautiful connection with DJ Moore. And then the defense came on the field, which played well all day, just couldn't close it out in the fourth quarter. So this one, I would say, is one of the worst losses of the year for the Bears.
Let me drill down on that a little bit, Cassie, because you mentioned a couple things there. Maybe not passing as much as people thought that they would, but late game, it felt like maybe Chicago got a little bit conservative. I'll go to that last drive that they had where the Lions needed the ball back. Chicago went 3 and out before the fumble, the possession before that. 2 straight runs into the line, not giving the ball to Fields and letting him try the edge. Has there been any talk? I know there was talk earlier this season about coaching and the way that they were using Fields. Any of that coming out of this game?
Well, I feel like in the beginning of the game, people actually felt like Luke Getsy was using Fields in the right way, moving the pocket, getting him out, allowing him to use his legs. Because if you remember in the early part of this season, they were forcing him to be a pocket passer, and that's just simply not his style. It's not how he found his success last year, and I get it, that part needs to improve. But his legs are a huge advantage for this team. And you're right, the run game, I didn't think got going outside of Justin Fields at all on Sunday. So it was disappointing that they felt like they're going to go to running the ball twice up the middle. And then on that 3rd down play, DJ Moore was on a crossing route. He was covered. So his next option was to go downfield to Tyler Scott. Tyler Scott is a very fast receiver, but he's a rookie. And I think the questions about the decision is, why are you putting a rookie in that position? Why isn't someone like Darnell Mooney, who hasn't had the best season so far this year, but why isn't he the receiver lined up in that spot instead of putting Tyler Scott, who hasn't had many catches all season, in the position to seal this deal for the team on the road in a hostile environment? He just kind of slowed up on his route a little bit. That was trying to track the ball and stuttered for a half second, and that was the difference in that. But yeah, there are a lot of questions on coaching, and I think the most frustrating part is not once have we heard any of the coaches take accountability for any of these games. And so you're starting to wonder, like, where does the responsibility lie? They keep saying they need to put players in the position to execute, and the players need to go out and execute. But there have been several games that I feel like have fallen on the coaching staff, and they revert back to just playing not to lose instead of playing to win. And that's a common theme we've seen, and I feel like we saw that in the fourth quarter again on Sunday.
Yeah, it's amazing the difference a foot can make, because that might have been the separation between making that catch on that final pass and not making that catch. Ahmad, look, let's get to you and the Vikings. Joshua Dobbs has been real fun to watch. Victory over the Saints, victory over the Falcons. A tough loss to the Broncos. What was the biggest takeaway coming out of that one in Minnesota?
Well, it was the same storyline that the Vikings had the first 3 weeks of the season. Turnovers, turnovers, turnovers. You simply can't win many NFL games when you're turning the ball over at a clip that they were this past Sunday night. So I think that's the big thing. But obviously, everyone's back at the practice facility today. They all have their heads up high, and they're optimistic about the rest of the season. They're the same way they were after all those losses at the first half of the season. They all know that they shot themselves in the foot. No one has truly beaten them. You know, in every game that they lost this year, they walked away just saying, if we would have done this right, if we would have did that, we could have won that game. So I think the team is not too down right now. Everyone is really high, talking about their college rivalries going on this weekend and, you know, the bragging rights that are going on in that locker room. So I would say the spirits are fine. No one's down after that loss.
Yeah, we got a little bit of that going on here with Michigan, Ohio State coming up this weekend as well, no doubt about it. You know, look, I've said the Vikings reminded me of the Lions last year. When the Lions lost and had that 1-6 start, they were actually scoring a lot of points. They were just giving the ball away a lot. And that, I think, gives you a little bit of confidence that you're not that far off. I think the Vikings have really been one of the better stories of the year, and I think they've done a great job there dealing with these injuries and finding a way to stay in this playoff race.
I mean, Dan, you hit the nail on the head. Everyone is talking about the letdown that the Vikings had this past week, but everyone keeps writing off the fact that they don't have Justin Jefferson. They lost Kirk Cousins 2 weeks ago. Cam Akers, who they traded for, tore his Achilles several weeks ago. So this is a depleted offense, yet they keep stepping up each and every week and have a chance to go out there and win each and every Sunday. I think it'll be competitive again this Monday versus the Bears. I'm sure it'll be a lot of drama every time, you know, division opponents meet up. There's always a lot on the line for those games. But right now, this offense may get Justin Jefferson. I doubt they will for this Monday's matchup. But then you have to think you have one of the best players in the NFL for your final 5 games of the season to make a push for the playoff spot. And all those teams in the hunt right now and the NFC, you aren't really sweating too much about those teams behind the Vikings. So I think they're in a good spot right now.
Brandon, it is amazing what one victory can do for a football team, and the Packers got themselves a nice win over the Chargers at home and over 300 yards passing for Jordan Love. You get that win, it's just a chance, I would guess, for everybody, including a young quarterback trying to figure things out, to exhale for a minute.
Yeah, that's definitely the case in Green Bay with this team. I mean, they've been trying to make progress each and every week, and recently they have seen that, especially with their win 2 weeks ago, then their loss against the Steelers. They did feel they were still making progress, and then the Chargers come to Lambeau, and Jordan Love finally throws for 300 yards. That's the first time he's done that in his career. He doesn't throw any interceptions, and they were able to get chunk plays because of the decisions he was making, and that's something they haven't been able to do much of this season. So offensively, when they were able to do that, they put themselves in a position to get a comeback win. That's also something they were unable to do previously, as they've lost so many games by just one score. So late in the game, when they are down to the Chargers, you had to look and see if Jordan Love really had that in him, and he was able to orchestrate a 75-yard drive, throw a touchdown pass that turns out to be the game winner, and they do all of that when they lose Aaron Jones before halftime and they lose Emmanuel Wilson before halftime. So they have to rely on A.J. Dillon, and they have to put Jaden Reed in the backfield at times and trying to find a different path to success in the ground game. And so to me, this was Jordan Love's breakout performance, and this team is riding high going into Detroit on Thursday.
You know, it was a start for the Packers, 2-1 when the Lions came in there the first time they played. Then they hit a bit of a skid. Now they've won 2 out of 3 again. Look, in many ways, we're envious of what you guys have been able to do in Green Bay with 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks for the last 20-some-odd years. Are people buying the progress that they're seeing from this Packers team, which is a little more difficult to measure when you're not dealing with Aaron Rodgers and you're not dealing with Brett Favre?
Yeah, people are buying it, but they're not buying it as in the 2023 season being a playoff season. They're buying it as in the future and to see what 2024 will bring after the 17 games of experience that they will have put together this season. But overall, there is a positive feeling. They do like the progress that's being made, and they're not ripping this team like they may have been 3 or 4 weeks ago. They're finally starting to see progress being made on the offensive side because because they're able to move the ball. The receivers for a long time weren't able to get open, weren't able to get yards after the catch. Well, on Sunday against the Chargers, that was the biggest factor for them, was getting yards after the catch and the receivers finding open spaces for Jordan Love to throw to them. So to me, when you are looking at this team, and especially as the fans and the coaching staff, there's a lot to be optimistic about, but there's also that understanding that this progress is going to be slow and incremental and go towards 2024 as opposed to 2023.
You know, one thing we'll talk about coming up in just a little bit is that injury list for the Packers right now is long, so we'll talk about that. And I think all these teams have dealt with injuries along the way. If you want to talk about the Lions coming off this past week, look, it's pretty much the opposite of what Cassie said. It was 57 minutes where they were outplayed on that football field and then finding a way in the last 3-4 minutes to get a win. It was improbable. And I think for a lot of Lions fans, what they're doing is learning about this team as they win. They're 8-2. We haven't seen an 8-2 start since 1962 in Detroit, and they've found different ways to win games. They haven't played perfect football games. There have been games where they've actually been bad for a period of time, and they've found a way to win. That's the most recent example of what happened on this Sunday. And if you're looking at something with this Lions team, it's that defense, which has struggled at times. Then it comes up big against the Bears late. So you're trying to figure out, all right, what is this? Is it a defense that's capable of winning games, or is this a defense you're going to have to win in spite of? And I think that's one thing that we're keeping an eye on, even going into this Thursday game against Green Bay, because we know, look, Jordan Love's coming off a 300-plus yard game. What's he going to do against this Lions secondary, which has had trouble stopping people for the past couple of weeks? So it was a terrific win for the Lions. Just a chance for them to get out of there and say, you know what, we might have stolen one. We got a short week. Let's get ready for Green Bay, and we'll see what happens there. Cassie, I want to come back to you because that Bears team that I saw and the Bears team that I was studying in the run-up to the game is not the same Bears team that looked like they struggled at the beginning of the year and looked like, you know, you didn't know whether or not they were ready for prime time. They may not be yet, but to my eye, they're getting better. There's talent on that team. This is not a team that you just want to cast aside and say there's nothing there. From my eye, Cassie, there's some talent with this Bears team.
Well, if I think you go back to the beginning of the season, there were injuries. So you're talking about, let's start with the offense first for the Bears. This past week was the first week where they were actually fully healthy on their offensive line all season. So they're finally going to get that continuity up front, protect Justin Fields. And even when Fields was out, you saw the offensive line start to make improvements as they were plugging guys in place. One of the unsung heroes of this entire team has been Tevin Jenkins. He's their left guard. He slid over to right guard when Nate Davis was out. He has been phenomenal and put through the ringer really with this entire front office last season, not even knowing if he was going to make it past training camp because he moved from tackle to guard all over the place, and he has been so solid for this Bears team. Then you get Khalil Herbert activated off IR. He's their #1 running back, but you also allow Deontay Foreman to prove himself a little bit, so you can have a little bit of a running back by rotation if you need to have that and just serve the hot hand. Then you look on defense. Their secondary went through times where it was just depleted. Jalen Johnson missed some games. Eddie Jackson missed some games. Jaquan Brisker missed some games, and it's a secondary that believes, despite statistically not really being towards the top of the league in their passing defense, they have a lot of talent back there. And Jalen Johnson is someone who's looking for a big contract, and I know he's kicking himself because he should have had 2 interceptions against the Lions. One probably would have gone back for a pick 6 if he had it. But the health of this team, I think, has been so key. And it's something that we keep going back to with what Ryan Poles did in the offseason and signing all these big free agents. Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards have been so solid in the run game. That's been really good for the Bears. DJ Moore, I can't remember what play it was in Detroit, but you talk about yak. That guy gets yak yards every single catch, it seems. He turns into a running back, and the way he fights for those yards is so impressive. Ryan Poles had always said, you know, he brought in pieces that were very talented, but how it looked on paper and how it would translate on the field is what this Bears team was waiting to see. And I do think there are times where we're waiting to see, all right, these are good players. Are the coaches putting them, though, in the right position where they can go out there and win games? Or are they still a couple pieces away? And which is why I think it was interesting that they were buyers at the trade deadline, bringing in Montez Sweat. They had no quarterback pressure until he came in, and he's made a huge difference in just the few games that he's played. So it's like you never want to count this Bears team out because they are in most every game, and we saw it last week. I think we'll continue to see it moving forward in important games. When you look at the Vikings Monday night, they have their bye week, and then they welcome the Lions into Soldier Field.
Dan Campbell said leading into that Bears game and coming off of that Chargers game, he felt like the Chicago team that he was looking at was more talented than the Los Angeles Charger team that they had just beaten. And I thought that was a nice compliment because the Chargers have some players too. But having seen the Bears, I don't think he's far off. I think that team's got some talent. It's just a matter of meshing that thing together. Vikings, look, we touched on it a little bit earlier, Ahmad. I think your head coach doesn't get enough credit for what's happened there. You look at the standings, I think if you'd have asked somebody 6 weeks ago or whenever Kirk Cousins went out, they'd have said Vikings are done, season over, and they're going to have to play without the best receiver in the National Football League. Do people around the country understand the job that Kevin O'Connell has done there?
No, and I asked Kevin O'Connell this last week after the game, and I said, what are your mentors saying? What's your phone like after the performance that you had with Josh Dobbs versus the Falcons and then again with the Saints? And he said, no one's reaching out to me. He said, and that's okay with him. He was like, he doesn't think anyone is taking notice for what he's doing, but I think he certainly should be in the mix for Coach of the Year because I don't think many coaches around the National Football League can lose their starting quarterback, their best wide receiver, lose a guy in Dalvin Cook who's gone now with the New York Jets, and also happen to miss your starting center and your starting left tackle for a period of time during this season. So when Josh Dobbs came in, he came into the offense having only been with the team for 3 days and yet helped the Vikings post the highest number of points they had posted and a win this season. Twice, in fact, that he led this offense to their highest point totals and wins. So I think it's nothing short of remarkable what Kevin O'Connell is doing with this offense, and he's making Josh Dobbs this superstar type player because before he was just a journeyman backup quarterback. Now this guy is probably going to get a multi-million-dollar deal after this season thanks to Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah, it's been good, and it's been fun to watch. And I think for Lions fans, it's been one of those things where they maybe anticipated that the Vikings were going to take a dive. Hasn't happened. I mean, they've won. Especially the one that jumped out was the win over San Francisco on a Monday night. And I think Lions fans said, we're not going to shake these guys. You're going to have to earn anything you get in the NFC North by beating the teams in the NFC North. And I know the Vikings are looking ahead with the understanding they still have 2 games with the Lions set later this year. So if they're hanging in there, they know they got a chance to maybe make up some ground on their own with those games against Detroit. Hey, Brandon, look, we're going to see the Packers on Thanksgiving Day. We saw them in week 4. How is this team different that we'll see coming in than they were maybe 2 months ago?
They're much more confident. They believe in Jordan Love. They believe in one another and whoever is having to play. You mentioned the long injury report. 16 players on the injury report going into this game. So they are believing in the guys that have to step up. I mean, they've been playing without Jair Alexander on defense, yet they've been able to play well. If you look at what they did against the Chargers on Sunday, they were able to limit them to only 1 touchdown out of 4 opportunities in the red zone. The Chargers came in as the second best team in the red zone with scoring, and the Packers hold them to 13 points. And so if you look all around with this team, the difference from week 4 to week 11 is their confidence in one another and their confidence in getting the job done. Now, of course, the results haven't been great, but they have won 2 of 3, and they are moving the ball, and their defense is coming up with key stops, and they're going deep into their roster to be able to do it. It looks like they're going to be missing Aaron Jones for sure on Thursday because reports are that it's an MCL sprain, so they have to rely on other players, and because they believe in one another, they haven't lost the locker room, and I think that is something that gives them the optimism and the belief that they can go into Detroit and compete and possibly come away with a win.
Yeah, I think this, if you look at the Lions and you talk about the difference between the Lions team that went to Green Bay in week 4 and the team that you'll see on Thursday, I think it's really what you said. It's confidence. I mean, this team now believes in themselves. They won 8 out of 10 to close last year. They've won 8 out of 10 to start this year. They're 16-4 in their last 20 games. You got a lot of young guys on this team. You got rookies contributing, second-year players, third-year players who don't really know what it is to win in this league yet and know what it takes. Well, they're learning, and they're getting that now. And now I think they have a real feel for it. But not only that, they've endured adversity, like the Bears game most recently, like the Chargers game, where they gave up touchdowns on the final 5 possessions to Los Angeles and still found a way to win. All those things just kind of harden your resolve to win a game. And when you get into that spot where it is a tight situation late in the game, you find a way to do it. So I think that's the interesting thing about the Lions. And from my vantage point, watching them is just the way that they can escape, the way that they can overcome. It's not something we've seen from a lot of Lions teams in the past. I think it's been said probably hundreds of times since that game on Sunday. That game against the Bears is one the Lions have always lost for the last several decades. Well, now they're finding a way to win that. Question is, going forward, can they continue to do that? Guys, I want to push it forward and talk about the game coming up on Sunday or Thursday. It's the Lions and Packers. Then we'll talk about the game coming up on Monday night, which is the Vikings and Bears. Brandon, let me start with you. I'll come right back to you. This Packers team coming in Thanksgiving Day. Obviously, everybody knows when they take the field, it's the only game happening. You know everybody is watching it. What are some things you're keeping an eye on in this game that might indicate to you how it's going for either side?
I want to see what the defense can do in creating turnovers. It hasn't been the strength of the Packers this season, but if they can do what the Bears did on Sunday to this team, then I think it puts them in a real good situation to come away with the win. I think the defense has to play the way it did against the Chargers, but it has to create more turnovers. You need pressure on Jared Goff, because when he has that, that's when his mistakes start to happen. And so you look for Rashawn Gary, look for Kenny Clark, look for Preston Smith to really try to get involved right away and create an energy for that defense to create the turnovers and to give Jordan Love a shorter field and an opportunity to move the ball. Those are the things that I will be looking for, especially early in this game.
What am I supposed to do with that injury list? It's the longest thing I've ever seen. Do I just wait till game day to figure out who's going to play? Is that the tack you're taking?
You have to. I mean, it's as long as like a CVS receipt. I know that's cliche, but it really is. I mean, when it came out on Monday with 16 players, you had to go down the list and see who wasn't on it. I mean, it is so deep. Again, the biggest issue right now, though, is the missing of Aaron Jones. I mean, if he does, he won't be playing Thursday. I mean, I can't imagine him going on the field after what happened to him. But I want to see if Jair Alexander is able to come back. I want to see who else can maybe be healthy enough on Thursday. That's the tough thing about a short week and a long injury list. So to me, like you just said, it is wait till Thursday morning and see what happens 90 minutes before the game kicks off.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that for sure. It's an electric day in the city of Detroit. I mean, this is a huge tradition for football fans in Detroit, football fans across the country. But when you're downtown in Detroit on Thanksgiving Day, a part of it, you just feel it. There is the parade up Woodward, the Macy's Parade, which takes place in the morning, and then you have the game coming up in the afternoon. So it's something people always say to me, man, you have to work every Thanksgiving. And I say to them, there's absolutely no place I would rather be. We know we got the early game, so we can be home in time for dinner, but it's going to be fun. And it's always fun when it's one of you guys, and this time it's the Packers, so it'll be exciting just to see that NFC North football out there, and we know Green Bay is going to come in ready to go. Which takes us to Monday night, guys. Ahmad, let me start with you. Vikings, chance to get back on track, chance to bounce back off that loss to the Broncos. What's it going to take Monday night against the Bears?
As long as they don't turn the football over, they'll have a chance to win. Because in every game that they lost this year, 5 losses, they all have been one-score losses. So I think as long as the Vikings aren't turning the football over, I think they'll be pretty successful, especially when you look at Brian Flores' defense. He just loves going up against young quarterbacks that have a little bit of trouble getting through their progressions, going through the reads, and checking things at the offensive line. And I think Justin Fields, he's going to be very complicated. It's very hard to decipher who's coming in Flores' defense when you have 7 guys at the line of scrimmage and then maybe 4 of them dropping back. So I think as long as they don't turn the football over, get Ty Chandler the ball. He's really explosive when he gets on the field at the running back position. So I think, they'll be in good hands. And Justin Jefferson came out on X today and he said that he does not care about all the fantasy football managers that have been reaching out to him in his direct messages about how he's selling their team. He said his health is way more important. So I don't think he'll be back this week, but I think TJ Hawkinson will have another big game. Jordan Addison will step up. And I think Brian Flores' defense will come to life again at US Bank Stadium on Monday.
It's going to be fun to watch. NFC North on Thursday, NFC North on Monday night. Guys, thank you so much for being a part of this show today. Thank you for watching us. Enjoy Thanksgiving. Enjoy another weekend of football. And thank you for being a part of this. We'll see you again next week with another edition of First and North.